Okay, so the ninth chapter will be the focus today. The four of those verses that are selected from the ninth actually capture the essence of the ninth chapter. So we have, so far in the seventh chapter, we talked about the universality of the self. The self, our self, is actually, constituted of the higher and the lower. The self as the energy and the matter part, the prakriti aspect, coming based upon the Panchendriyas, Panchabhutas, and other things. And so we have these two, and therefore the self, that which energizes us, is actually a universal entity for each one of us, every one of us, it is the same. And then we also looked at the imperishability of the self. The self is eternal. It is not something that dies. It is always there, it was always there, and it is there, and it will always be there. So the eternity of the self and the universality of the self was what we discussed in the previous two sessions. And today we will be looking at going to look at the ninth chapter, which is actually now trying to prove that the infinite is the self is infinite. So the infinite nature of the self is basically what the ninth chapter is focused upon. So let us look at the important aspects of the ninth chapter through these four verses that we have selected. If you look at the screen, on the infographic on the screen, we can see that the infinite, I've captured the infinite in a dotted rectangle, which denotes the endlessness of it. The infinite, it is everything. It has everything in it. That whatever was there yesterday is there today and will be there tomorrow. Time, eternal time. Everything that is there, it is there in that infinite. So it is called as everything. We can call the infinite as that composed of everything. That everything implies that which is not yet there, and it will come. So this is actually treated as one single entity in the wisdom of our sages. In fact, even the science, it's talking about that state from which everything evolved, emanated and evolved, as the enormous singularity. That is a single, the one. In our Indic wisdom, it is, or in the studies of Sanatana Dharma, this infinite has been given this name as Brahman, and that Brahman is called as the one, with no second. It is the ultimate cause of all causes. The one, Brahman, that infinite. And then this, at some point, maybe Big Bang, the universe evolved from it, emerged from that infinity. The emergence of the universe is considered as a manifestation into plurality of this singularity. The singularity now became plural, multiplied, multiple. And they started transforming. So the whole universe is that initial Big Bang and the transformations thereof, of matter and energy. And ultimately, it actually landed up with the life forms and other things, and within each one of us as the Atman, that power, the universal forces, became the conscious power, consciousness power within us, or the life-giving and living power, which we call as the Atman, which is nothing but the infinite itself, energizing our intellect, mind, and the body, BMI. That BMI, the BMI, then, started functioning, started exhibiting each one of their characteristics. Intellect, its characteristics of rationality; the mind, its characteristic of emotionality; the body, its characteristics of the sensuousness. So through the intellect, then it started expressing as a power of intentions and desires. It also gave rise to the feeling of ownership. That is, that intellect then took upon itself the cause for everything that is outward, which is what is called as ego. So ego plus intellect and the mind and the body started functioning, and they started playing tricks on us. We became selfish, or we ran after selfish pursuits, physical pleasures of the senses, B, emotional whims of the mind, and the intellectual satisfactions driven by the desire to enjoy these pleasures. So they became the earthly actions, or the actions of the BMI, powered by the self, and then the self taking control. The intellect taking control. So that is the jiva that we are, and our mind and intellect are influenced by three gunas of sattva, rajas, and tamo gunas, shaping the impressions, our tendencies, and our inclinations. And we started functioning in this world, earthly action. But the desires can be two types: the selfish desires or unselfish desires. Selfish desires is basically what drives us to enjoy the pleasures of the body, mind, and intellect, whereas the unselfish desires are aimed at the joys of the inner self, Atma Tripti, which is actually composed of supreme motivations of, focusing on the joys of the inner self with the right attitudes, karma yoga, sincere austerities, so that we apply thought power, rationality, intelligence into our actions. Intelligence that is subtle intelligence. So the wisdom and things like austerities and charity and all those things becomes part of that mental attitude of running after the joys of the self instead of the joys of the BMI. And this joys of the self is a sustainable happiness. It's a provider of sustainable happiness, which is basically what is closer to the infinite happiness of self. The self, which has also been characterized by our Vedas as Satchidananda Brahman, as Sat, Chit, and Ananda. So the Ananda aspect means that it is the happiness itself. And that happiness is basically what our true nature is. And therefore, that happiness, a perennial state of happiness, constantly being in the state of happiness, is basically brought to us through our supreme motivations instead of running after our selfish tendencies. So this is how we are existing in this world. And we are normally, every common man is projecting things from the mind into the outside world, connecting with it, and then receiving things from the outside. So the conscious power that we have as Atman within us is getting projected through the senses to the outside world. That is what the Upanishad says. The Upanishad says that self-existent Aranji Kani Vidradam Swayambhu. Swayambhu, meaning that which is existing by itself. That's the power. The self within us is always existent. It is Swayambhu. That created the senses, in the sense that it enlivened the senses, the physical apparatus, the senses. And the senses, what are their functions? The senses always directed outward. And therefore, we have a tendency to look outward, not within ourselves. We forget because we utilize the devices that are always focused outward. So the self-existent created the senses outgoing, and therefore we see not the infinite within, but everything outside. But then the Katha Upanishad says, some intelligent man, in the sense, evolved personalities, some intelligent man with his senses turned away from the outer objects, desiring infinitude, started seeing the infinite. So that is what the Katha Upanishad says. This is how The infinite self expresses through us, through the BMI, which are outward oriented, and everyone goes after that. It flows like that. But some people take stock of that, catch out of that senses, and then look inward. They bring the mind inward to see the self, to experience the self, to understand the self, and to experience the self. This is basically the picture. So it's something like that. If you look at the infographic, this infographic gives you a sense of what is happening. The self is pulsing through us as the life force, the Atman, energizing our subtle mind, the rational mind, the emotional mind, the physiology, and the senses, giving rise to various things at various levels. And when our desires, when our motivations are directed to satisfy the ego, the intellectual fancies, emotional mind, emotions, physiology, and driven by hunger and sensations, and the senses, and the physical characteristics of strength, and we are looking, and then of course the static thing, not static, the physical characteristics like height, weight, gender, color, etc. We are attracted towards all those things, and we are driven by those things outward. That outward projection of the power of the self through the BMI, if you look at the bottom line, it is that selfishness is projecting outward through the senses into the outside world and bringing and connecting us with the outside world. That is selfishness. Whereas when some higher intellectual person, in the sense subtle intellect, it's not about our intelligence that we normally speak about, higher IQ, and no, it is not about IQ. It is about that subtle intelligence within each one of us. Every one of us has got that subtle intelligence. The Uma Maheshwari, that we talked about that in the Keno, in the Keno Upanishad, in the postings that I have put, that Indra went and met Uma, the daughter of Himavan. That is, and then he realized that Uma connected Indra to Brahma. That is basically, it is a representation of the subtle intelligence, Uma. And that subtle intelligence, if we are able to tap, that is what it is about. Sacrifices. It is about selflessness. It is about the joys of the inner self. If we are attracted by that, then that we are directed towards the inner self. Then we are directed towards the inner self. So this is that blue arrow, that power pulling us from outside into the inner world of the joys of the inner self. Which in practical sense, what does it imply? It implies our mental attitude of sacrifice. Because sacrifice is Brahman. Brahman yajne pratishthitam. Gita declares, Bhagavad-Gita declares in 3rd chapter that Brahman yajne pratishthitam. Brahman is rooted in sacrifices. The power of Brahman is rooted in sacrifices in the manifested world. The moment we have in our mind an attitude of sacrifice, that means Brahman is taking shape within us. We are becoming Brahman. So, if all our attitudes, desires, then powering attitudes, etc., are aimed at satisfying this Brahman, which is satisfying the mode of Brahman, which is sacrifice. So all our actions, if they are directed towards making sacrifices, and of course the details of what making sacrifices means, we have already discussed in chapter 3 and chapter 4, etc. In practical terms, and I have been posting those things also onto the group. Everything, in working in the family, in the workplaces, in society, everywhere we are getting hundreds of opportunities every minute, or at least every day. If you look at it, you can phase it out into 3 or 4 about 5 or 10 hour intervals, 5 hour intervals, or whatever, and then look at the opportunities that you got to apply this power of sacrifice every day. So constantly, if you start looking out for opportunities to apply the attitude of sacrifice in your thoughts and actions, If you are interested in doing that, if you are motivated in doing that, that means you are motivated by the joys of the self. And slowly, across a period of time, maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, or whatever, constantly practicing this, it will become a habit. It will become a habit. Everything, whatever you do, you will always look at the larger picture, developing a perspective that is larger. And if you have a larger perspective, what happens is basically, it is a phenomenal, what you call expansion of the mind, which we will see in chapter 11. That is basically what Arjuna obtained as because of this learning. And his orientation, looking at this knowledge, this wisdom, he started seeing that magnificent form of the self, that Vishwarupa, that infinite form, or universal form, or infinite form of the self, Vishwarupa Darshan, 11th chapter. And because of which, if you actually get that, then the way you think and the way you act will slowly make you create an impact in this world that is incomparable. As the examples given in 10th chapter, they are the manifestations of the grandeur of self, the vibhudhis. Vibhudhi Yoga, the 10th chapter, describes the empirical examples of such brilliance that you can see in the outside world, in individuals, in man, in animals and plants and and mountains and everywhere. That Vishwarupa Darshanam leads you to the Vishwarupa Darshanam also. So the 10th and 11th chapters are empirical chapters which describe this magnitude of the vision of self, that which you get because of the faith in the universality of the self, Jnana Vijnana Yoga, in the imperishability of the self, Akshara Brahma Yoga, and the infiniteness of the self, which is the royal knowledge, the Rajavidya, Rajaguhya Yoga of the 9th chapter. So you just see the 5 chapters. They encompass a kind of wisdom that is going to unleash the power of self from within you, so that you become the bhakta that Krishna describes in Bhakti Yoga, chapter 12. So these 6 chapters are wonderfully, knit together so that you get a mindset that is refined with bhakti. And therefore, the first 6 chapters describe the Karma Yoga. Therefore, the Karma Yogi in you is going to explode in infinitude. So that is, see the structure of Bhagavad-Gita. First 6 chapters, it talked about practicing it initially, even without knowing why it is so. And then the second 6 chapters are talking about this knowledge of the self, to create the bhakti within you, so that you really get inspired by that power within you in your actions. The 12th, up to the 12th chapter, that is basically what Krishna has, explained in the Bhagavad-Gita. So this is how the Bhagavad-Gita is structured. This is how the Bhagavad-Gita needs to be looked at. This is how it is interlaced wisdom of, or the 3-stranded braided necklace. That is basically the whole Bhagavad-Gita is. So let's move ahead now. So in this verse, first verse of this 9th chapter, which we have selected, Maya Tadam, he says, the infinitude, to prove the infinitude. Maya Tadamidam Sarvam Jagat Avyakta Murtina Matstani Sarva Bhutani Na Chaham Teshu Avasthita. It says that the whole world is pervaded by this self. That which we call as Atman, the self, is pervading the whole universe, the whole world, the whole universe. In the unmanifested form, we do not see it, because we see the self only as this body BMI, because it is living and it is talking and it is going about having desires and working in this world. So we see only this, but the self is not only there, it is everywhere. That we do not see outside. I don't see myself outside anywhere. Unmanifested, it is unmanifested outside. We cannot see it. But within this body, it is manifested as consciousness. And therefore I see it, because it is working, powering my BMI, producing ego, and then ideation, emotions, and sensations. So self becomes manifested within my body. I see this because I see my ideas, I see my emotions, and I see my sensations. I feel it, I can express it. So I feel that I am that. But outside the ken of this BMI, I have this infinite self outside. I don't see me. I don't see me. I have two parts, the I that I do not see and the I that I see. The I that I do not see is the capital I, and the I that I see is the small I. This is the difference between the capital I and the II. This is what everyone is. The infinitude is moving around with a center at the BMI. And we say that I am that center only. I am not that infinite radius. That is our problem. So that is why Krishna says the whole self is, the whole universe is pervaded by me, the self. Maya tadamidam sarvam. In the unmanifested Jagat, avyakta murtinaha. The whole Jagat is pervaded by in the state of avyakta, unmanifested state. That which cannot be seen. So, therefore, what does it say? Every one of us exists in the self, in me. Actually, that is why it says, Matstani sarvabhutani. All beings exist in the self. So just imagine that I am existing in the self. You are existing in the self. He is existing in the self. The dog is existing in the self. The cat is existing in the self. The elephant is existing in the self. The coconut tree is existing in the self. The mango tree is existing in the self. Because everything is in the self. All beings exist in the self. But the self is not contained in each one of them. The self is not contained within me only. The self is not contained only within the mango tree. The self is not contained only within that mountain range. The self is not contained only within that pot of water. It is not contained. It cannot be, because it is everywhere. You cannot make it contain into something which is limited. So that infinitude is very beautifully declared here as Maya tadamidam sarvam jagat avyaktamurtinaha matstani sarvabodhani na chaham teshu avasthita. This whole world is pervaded by the self in the unmanifested form. All beings exist in the self, but the self is not contained in them. That is a definition of the infinitude of the self. So if you look at the picture there, the infinite and each one of our individuals' selves, small i's. The capital I is the same for everyone. Capital I is same. And each one of the small I, we think of ourselves as the small I, and they are separate. They apparently look separate. So this is basically what it's. So you can say that you are in, the small I is in capital I. The small I is inside capital I. But the capital I is not in the small I. Isn't it? In the picture, you can very clearly see that. Capital I is not within the small I, but the small I is within capital I. That is exactly what is written here. This whole world is pervaded by the self in the unmanifested form. All beings exist in the self, but self is not contained in them. It is as simple as that. The only thing is that each one of us think that the BMI is me and project the small I onto the capital I. And then say, I am the small I. I forget, I don't see the capital I at all. Just like on the rope, in darkness, in ignorance, I project the snake onto that rope and say that it is a snake. I forget the rope. Raju Sarpavadam. That is the perception problem that we all have. Okay, so I think that is clear. No? You should actually start, every one of us should start thinking about the infinitude that I am. And when you start every day thinking about this, at least in the morning, 5 minutes, think I am infinite. Keep doing that. After some time, maybe 1 year, 2 years later, you will actually start feeling the infinitude. And when you start feeling the infinitude, you will start working as a karma yogi. Not only as a karma yogi, because we know this knowledge, because we have this knowledge, that is important. Because we have this knowledge. What is this knowledge? The knowledge is about the infinitude of my Atman, the self. That is the knowledge. When we actually apply the knowledge onto my thoughts and actions, karma yoga, then I become a bhakta. So see this action, bhakta, bhakti, karma, bhakti, and jnana. They have to come together. Then only we actually connect with the infinitude. Otherwise, it is mere practice. Mere rote practice doesn't really connect you. You can only verbally say that I am a karma yogi, I have connected with infinitude as a karma yogi. But no, if you want to really connect with the infinitude, you need to have the knowledge of the infinitude. And that knowledge is this conviction within the mind. When we say knowledge, it is not about jnana yoga or knowledge. People get confused and say, oh no, it is not for me. No, it is absolutely wrong. The Bhagavad-Gita, the Upanishads is not talking about jnana in the sense of our knowledge that we talk about in the outer world. Of, understanding, trying to understand physics, chemistry, biology, economics, and all, accounting, and all those things. No, that is not what the knowledge is that we are talking about. The knowledge, the jnana yoga, that Bhagavad-Gita, the Upanishad is telling you is the mental conviction that I am the infinite. That mental conviction is what is called as knowledge. So can you say that I can never be a jnana yogi? No, you cannot, because without mental conviction, how can you actually become a bhakta? You cannot. Without mental conviction, you cannot become a bhakta. The mental conviction that Sri Guruvayurappan is, as the infinite, is sitting at Guruvayur temple. Are you convinced? If you are convinced only, you will go there. That conviction is the jnana yoga. That conviction, that Guruvayurappan is itself the infinite, which is in me also. That conviction is jnana yoga. And then you really become the bhakta of Guruvayurappan. This, people really don't understand this. They talk about karma, separate, jnana, separate, and bhakti, separate. Bhakti, I need only bhakti, nothing more. No, absolutely, you cannot. Bhakti is what? Is conviction in the self. Conviction of the infinite, in the infinite. So, that is what it is. I think it is an erroneous concept of jnana yoga as knowledge, something similar to physics, chemistry, biology, economy, and all the economics and all that, which is not, no, that is material knowledge, different. The spiritual knowledge is about the conviction of the infinitude within our mind. Bhakti, that is bhakti. So, this is basically what the 6 chapters of the Bhakti Pada in Bhagavad-Gita is aiming at, from chapter 7, 8, 9, etc. to 12. 6 chapters are actually giving you the conviction that the infinite is universal, imperishable, and infinite. Universal, imperishable, and infinite. So you get convinced that I am universal, imperishable, and infinite. And it is the same infinitude that I see everywhere, in the temples, in me, everywhere, in everyone else. So this is basically, the 9th chapter is starting with the seed of that knowledge, which says it is which talks about the nature of infinitude. The nature of the infinitude that you are. The nature of the infinitude that I am. For every one of us should actually then think like that. The nature of the infinitude that I am. This whole world is provided by me. The self in the unmanifested form. All beings exist in the self. Maya, Mastani, in me, Matsani. Nachakam tadvedeshan, but the self is not contained in the. Okay, so it's like that, another picturization to hit your mind so that the conviction takes root. When the conviction takes root, you will become the bhakta. You will become bhakta. And when the conviction, driven by the conviction, you start working in the world in a selfless manner, you become a karma yogi. That is what Gita is saying. With the conviction that I am the infinite, with the love and conviction that I am the infinite, I start actually working for the satisfaction of that selflessness. That is karma yoga. Selflessness is karma yoga. The conviction is bhakti. And what do you actually, the sugar that you use in the coffee cup so that the coffee becomes sweet. That is the actual ingredient of sugar, is that ingredient of knowledge that we will see in the Jnana Yoga part of it. So that your conviction takes root as well as your actions get reflected by that conviction. So it is Jnana, Karma, Bhakti Yogas all coming together. Okay. So it's like that, each individual in this expanse of this infinitude, there is a Ram, there is a Krishna, and there is him. Let's say I have just 3 blobs I have put there. Each one of them, actually, I'm going to bring them into this infinite from the, for the visual representation only, into this infinitude. You see similarly, for example, sun. Sun is self. Like, I'll see. Actually, it is all self everywhere. The yellow thing, the yellow expands is self. Infinite. Now, it's everywhere. Self is everywhere. Yellow. Take the case of sun. Take the case of sun. See, as it moves around, you can see the self everywhere. And it is positioned there. You see the self as the sun. You see the coconut tree, self. It is also the self. Similarly, Ram, see, self. It is self. Krishna, self. It is self. Rahim, self. It's all self. But we give different names to the forms. That's the name and form are physical. And we give identity for that part of it, of the self. That's all. That part of the self is Anandji. That part of the self is Rajita Devi. That part of the self is Sangeeta, etc. Where at the moment physically where Anandji is sitting, Sangeeta cannot sit. Physically different. But the self is everywhere. But only the BMI is actually positioned somewhere else. And we think that I am that BMI only. And therefore I am separate from Anandji. Actually, my identity is not different from my Anandji's. I am the self. He is also the self. It is the infinite. Same thing. The bodies are different. The minds are different. And the intellects are different. Therefore, that separate intellect produces separate egos. And we all become, and that egos capture us and then start projecting outward. Kathopanishad says. And every one of us then exists in this world as different entities. That is basically what is happening. Okay. That is what Kathopanishad 2.1.1 says. Self-existent, created, senses outgoing. Therefore, one sees not the infinite within. Some intelligent man with the senses turned inward, away from the outer objects, desiring infinitude, started seeing the infinite within. Kathopanishad. When world is present, actually it is there is a famous statement which as a quote, I just took it and pasted it here. Think about it, reflect on it. When world is present, Brahman exists. That is, when I am here, I exist for me. I exist. I is Brahman also, self, infinite. When the world is not there, that is, when this BMI is not there, what happens? Then Brahman alone remains. The BMI is gone. When I am existing, I am existing as a physical BMI. I say that I am there. But when I die, what remains? My BMI is gone, but the I remains. That is the fundamental knowledge that the Upanishads are talking about. Thousands of Upanishads, or 108 Upanishads, or the 18 fundamental main Upanishads, all of them are talking about the same language, same thing. There is only one thing that we need to know. That is that when the world is present, Brahman exists. But when the world is not, then Brahman alone exists. This is the understanding that all the hundreds of Upanishads ultimately teaches. There is only one knowledge, and that is the knowledge of all knowledge. If you understand that, in the sense, it is very simple in life. Literally, it is simple, but understanding that, connecting with that, being one with that is basically what the process is of living in this world. And for that, what is required is karma, bhakti, jnana, integration within our BMIs, through our BMIs, within our BMIs, of the BMI, we need to get integrated like that. And that is the reason why the Upanishads were written, and that is the reason why Veda Vyasa summarized the Upanishads as, and put it in the Mahabharata as the Bhagavad-Gita, the knowledge of the divine, the music of the divine, the music of the self. That is Bhagavad-Gita. So it's like that. See, another visualization is about, our experiences, knowledge, memories, and vasanas working through our mind, through the senses, vision, smell, taste, touch, and sound, and making us to work in this world through karmendriyas, speech, grip, locomotion, reproduction, and excretion. The capital I is powering it. The capital I is powering it, and we make the small I within our BMI. That is what is. This is how we exist in this world, in the anatomy of the spiritual self. The spiritual me. I is in I, small I is in capital I, but capital I is not in small I. Okay, just summarizing that. Or another visualization. Again, you can start visualizing the dog, the man, the tree, and the clod of earth, or the stone. The objects in this world. What are they? It's all powered by the self. The dog is powered by the self. The man is powered by the self. The tree is powered by the self. And that stone is powered by the self. It is flowing, that infinitude, blue is flowing through each one of us. This is the picture. This is the larger picture. If you look at all these things, if you start seeing the self working through each one of us, the same self working through each one of us in this fashion, think about the mental revolution that it can bring about in the way we interact with the world. That is what the net effect of learning Upanishads is and should be. Okay, so that is Vedanta philosophy. I want only for you to understand this. And what happens is, generally we identify ourselves with the physical, that black thing. The stone identifies itself with the stone, the tree with that tree, the man with that BMI, and the stone and the dog also with its own BMI. We identify. That identification is called as actually tadatmyam. We become, we actually attain tadatmya with the physical things. That is our problem. The dog, me, the tree, the stone. We become different entities because of the tadatmya of identifying ourselves with the BMI, the nama rupa, name and form. But instead, if we understand that the self is pulsing through every one of us, enabling the physical things to function in this world, then imagine the kind of revolution that it can bring about in this world. It will be like this. We'll soon forget the names and forms. And when we soon forget the names and forms, what happens? Think about the tree forgetting itself. It merges with that infinitude. The Paramatman is outside the ken of the senses, mind, and the body, and hence cannot be objectified by them. So the Paramatman is what we all are, the infinitude that we all are. So let us all actually start reflecting daily, every minute, every second. And soon we will start feeling the infinitude. Okay, so this is what ninth chapter, this is the royal knowledge, Raja Vidya. It is also the royal secret because we know it, but yet when we step out of this session, we forget it. Something that we do not see when it is there is a secret, isn't it? That is Rajaguhyam. That is the royal secret. So this knowledge has got this peculiarity that it is the kingly knowledge as well as it is a kingly secret. That is why this ninth chapter is called as Rajavidya, Rajaguhya Yoga. So the moment we start connecting with the Rajavidya, Rajaguhya Yoga, Rajavidya, Rajaguhya knowledge, Rajavidya, Rajaguhya Yoga, it becomes Rajavidya, Rajaguhya Yoga. And for that, what is required is the conviction on this knowledge. And that conviction is what Krishna is trying to attempt to create within our minds. So we have to attempt thinking like that. We have to constantly practice this. And then Krishna will become successful. At least we have a duty to make Krishna successful, isn't it? That is all. That is what is Jnana Yoga. Take the plunge that I will make Krishna successful. Of course, Krishna doesn't need to be successful because he is success only. But still, in our minds, we have to have that attitude. And that when we cultivate that attitude that I am not going to let down Krishna, then you will start getting the conviction on this knowledge. That is being told to Arjuna, through Arjuna, to all of us. Through various chapters, 18 chapters, 700 verses. Krishna is trying by all means to give you different perspectives. As a general thing, karma perspectives, bhakti perspective, and the jnana perspective. Six chapters. And then within each one of them, he is giving you different perspectives, examples, and strategies and processes to attain that knowledge. I don't think any teacher would have attempted so many techniques, so many strategies for one single thing to make you convinced that you are the infinite. That's all. Krishna's trying has been, and it is going on for thousands of years. Only very few people get convinced. Out of thousands of millions of people, only few, hundreds get convinced. So that is not a problem of Krishna. That is the problem of the conviction generation within our minds. Because we start going through different routes. Thinking, about this as that, okay, I will become a karma yogi. I will only do karma. I don't want bhakti or jnana. Some people say, I am a bhakta. I will be a bhakta. I know karma and jnana for me. Some people say, I will be a jnani. I don't want to be a bhakta or karma yogi. This is a problem. You cannot. Unless you have the three in you, you will not be convinced. That is what Krishna is trying to tell. Thousands of years we have been going through this, and every generation has thousands of people not wanting to believe that. So therefore, Krishna is... We do not actually give Krishna to succeed. That's the problem. Okay, now going ahead. So now let us look at, this is a little bit more involved infographic, which I had posted, but I will, just for explanation, I will start explaining that. Satchidanandam, Brahman. Brahman is Satchidananda. The nature of Brahman is Sat, Chit, and Ananda. Sat means existence. Chit is knowledge or conscious wisdom. and Ananda is bliss. So I can very well say, all of us can very well say, I am existence, I am knowledge, and I am happiness. Instead of say I am happy, I like to say I am happiness. So there is a difference. Meaning all of us say I am happy, isn't it? Or I am sad, the opposite of it. I am happy. When you say I am happy, you are actually saying my mind is feeling happy. That's it. You are not actually identifying happiness with you. You are identifying happiness with the mind. That is why I am saying I am happiness. I am happy. Instead, we have to learn to say I am happiness. When you say I am happiness, mind does not have any role in it. That I is now going to impart happiness into mind, whatever happens, if you do that. So I am happiness. Similarly, I am the wisdom, I am knowledge, I am awareness, I am consciousness. Then what happens is, what is that confidence that will get come to you is that when I say I am knowledge, that means that any knowledge, outside knowledge, is actually me, but I, for the mind, my mind and intellect at the moment is not aware of it. That's all. Actually, I am that knowledge. So it gives you the confidence to attack any problem. In the practical sense, if you take it, if you look at it, that is what it is. It is not about running away from everything. It is about capturing the moment and attacking it, because I know that I am capable of doing it. And I am existence. When you say I am existence, it implies that I have no, what you call, death, no failure, nothing. Because I am always successful. I am success. I am existence. I am the truth. That feeling, conviction, we have to cultivate. That Satchidananda is our essential nature. Satchidananda is our essential nature. Saying that, I am 5 feet 6 inches tall. I am dark. I have a lot of hair. I am that, that those are not your essential nature. Those are the essential nature of your BMI. The physical things that actually is getting powered by me. That is what it is. So my essential nature is Satchidananda. This Satchidananda, when it is expressing through the physical body, I get limited in existence. And I get limited in my knowledge of thinking, thoughts, and other things which currently I know. But there is a window that is kept open to infinite knowledge within us, which is called as prajna. Okay, forget about those things at the moment. At the moment, think about the next aspect, which is the happiness. The happiness aspect of the power of the self is basically what drives the mind to give 3 strands of happiness, which is called as Priya, Moda, and Pramoda, as according to our Upanishad philosophy. Priya, Moda, and Pramoda. Priya is, the anticipation of happiness. And when you anticipate about something, you get happy. That anticipation is also one form of happiness. Moda is about, when the desired object comes to your hand, you have some different kind of happiness that is called as moda. And when you start enjoying that physical thing or whatever it is, it gives you pramoda. So the bliss aspect, ananda aspect has now become physical. Priya, moda, and pramoda. And then we think that is what happiness is. Priya, moda, and amoda. Instead of the real nature of happiness, bliss that I am, I start thinking that happiness means Priya, Moda, and Amoda. Think about this. This is how we all get selfish. Because we limit ourselves to Priya, Moda, and Pramoda. Because that is what is expressing through my mind. Priya, Moda, and Pramoda. And what happens is that Priya, Moda, and Amoda, that is the bottom case. That our intellect, mind, and the senses, satisfying the intellect, mind, and senses is basically what Priya, Moda, and Pramoda is. normally, outward, projecting outward, into the outward world. So Priya about outward objects, Moda about outward objects, attaining the outward objects, and Pramoda of enjoying the outward objects. This becomes my expression of happiness. That is called as selfishness, and it gives rise to hope and despair, and it gives rise to what you call as a degraded form of living in this world with hope and despair. When it is hope, we have energy. When it is despair, we feel energyless and gone. So our life becomes life and death cycle, samsara, life and death cycle. That is called as life and death cycle. But when some wise men looked at inside, as Kathopadin, it says, the intellect, when mind and the senses, when it starts looking inward to the self, I need Priya of the happiness of self, the Moda of the self, and the Pramoda of the self. When it is inward, then we reach sustainable fulfillment. This is when our life gets stronger through the use of human value systems, values, attitudes, right attitudes, great motivations, and integration of various forms of skills and competencies, etc., and work towards the happiness of satisfying not just yourself, but the larger goals, society and the larger goals. So this is the second half. This is what is called as inspiration. This is the state of bhakti. That is what the 9th chapter is defining. This is what is called as bhakti. And the process for doing that will be talked about now. Okay, before that, let us look at this now as a scientific perspective on what our, the way the self expresses to us, the universe. And the universe is represented within our, our brain in some form. I have shown as cube here, but forget about that. And, the universe is represented within our brain. We see the whole universe. We can actually study about the universe, understand the universe, and everything in this universe. The brain is capable of representing that. The whole universe inside, the whole self inside. And our infinitude is getting limited by the body, mind, and intellect. That's all. But the infinity is right inside. But we get limited. We do not see everything. We do not think about everything. We are not aware of everything. That awareness is limited because of the senses. The senses are limited. Therefore, the awareness gets limited. In another way, if you take away the colors and other things, then this is how it is. This is how everything is. We get limited by the senses and the mind. That's all. We project that limited thing into the outside world, and the world is limited for us. That's what is happening. Okay, this is only to visualize at a different level. Going ahead. Then Krishna says, next verse defines the nature of it in a more detailed manner, which is Gadir Bharta Prabhu Sakshi Nivasa Sharanam Suhrit Prabhava Pralaya Sthanam Nidhanam Bijam Avyayam. So he has used different words to describe the nature of the self as it is manifested within each one of us. It is the reason, the refuge, the origin, supporter, the Lord, Master, Owner, Sakshi, Witness, Prabhu, Lord, Master, Sakshi, Witness, Nivasa. It is the residence of the self, of everything. Our thoughts and everything is residing on the self. Saranam, it is a shelter. It depends on the self. Thoughts depend on the self. Sukrit, it is a friend. It is your friend, ultimate friend. This ultimate nature of the friend was described in the Puranjana Vakyanam story in Mahabhagavata Purana. Prabhava, it is the source which gives you everything in this material world. Pralaya, Sthana, Nidhana, Bija, Avyaya, all different ways of looking at the same thing. But in a practical sense, if we look at it, it will be like this. That it is simple things to reflect upon the power of the self. This is what verse 9 to 18 describes these things in the 9th chapter. So in the practical way, I'm listing it out. Think about this. Every day you can tap the self. That is the interesting thing. Krishna has defined these various opportunities for you to connect with the self in the 9th chapter. After telling that it is infinite, Krishna gives examples where you can actually every day connect with the infinity. How do you connect with the infinity? Practical ways, very practical ways. What is that? One, some of them I will explain, but it is a general thing. So I will post that and you can think about it. Look at it. Use determination to achieve a goal. You set goals, higher goals. Okay, higher goals always. We are not talking about negative, evil things, but positive things. Because sacrifice, Brahman. So set highest goal in sacrifices. Whatever you want to do, serve the society, serve the local family, serve the society, serve the organization, serve the nation, whatever it is. Use use determined. Be determined to do that. So when you show determination towards your goal, what is happening is you are connecting with infinite, the self. Connecting with the self. Determination is a spark of the self. Similarly, your capacity to choose the right path, viveka, to achieve lasting success. Then, our capacity or your attitude of always having a proper foundation for your successes, the right foundations for your successes. Confidence, doing something in confidence. Perseverance to achieve your goal. Understanding that you have infinite potential and focus. Mind's focus is expression of self. Hard work. Your mental attitude of doing hard work is expression of self. Consistency and persistence to go through this right path, that is also self. Honesty is self. Processes, when you follow processes, that means you are following self. Selfless action ultimately is self. So see, these are the practical ways. Every day, every opportunity in all the endeavors that we take up, you can see that you can apply this, which means that you can bring the self into it. Bringing the self into whatever you do, is the ultimate goal that is achieved. So that way, this self is that which controls from within each one of us, Adhyatma. And the self is that which helps you from around the immediate surroundings, Adibhuda. And the self is that which helps us through the universal outer nature, that is Adi Devika. So Adhyatma, Adibhuda and Adi Devika ways, you can see the self in all these three stages. And therefore, praying to the self, Adhyatma, Adibhaudika and Adibhuda, within, near about you and in the universe outside, praying for that self in that three stages to bring you peace, harmony and happiness, etc. is basically what the purpose of chanting Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti 3 times. In every mantra in the Upanishads. The Adhyatma, the Adibhuda and Adidevika. So let us be protected from the difficulties and sorrows that come to us from within, from around you and from the whole phenomenal world. For that, let us pray. That is Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Okay, that is another, just connecting it with some of the ritualistic practices that we follow with this philosophy, with this fundamental philosophy of the self. And then he comes to the most central of all the slokas in the 9th chapter, which is the central sloka of the whole of Bhagavad-Gita, which is the formula for focus and real union with the secret of self. Secret knowledge of self, the royal knowledge of self. Rajavidya, Rajakhya, identification with that knowledge is Ananyas Chindayanto Mam Yejanaha Paryupasate Tesham Nityabhiyuktanam Yogakshemam Vahamiyah. Ananyas Chindayanto Mam, without any other thoughts. Ananyas Chindayanto Mam Yejanaha Paryupasate. So without any other thoughts of selfishness, be always focused on the self. Ejanaha Paryupasate, whoever worship that self, the joys of that self, without any distractions. Ananyas Chindayanto Mam Ejanaha Paryupasate. Tesham, such people whose Nitya Yukta, Tesham Nityabhiyuktanam. Nityabhiyuktanam. Such people whose mind and the intellect and the senses. Nityabhiyuktanam implies that intellect, mind, and senses are working together. That means the intellect, the subtle intellect is permeating the mind and the senses. Always, my mind, emotions are permeated by the subtle intellect, subtle wisdom of sacrifice. The senses are permeated by the subtle wisdom of sacrifice. The intellect, full intellect, the rational thinking is permeated by the subtle wisdom of sacrifice. When my intellect, mind, and the body, Nityabhi, always, permanently, consistently, persistently, when it is permeated by the self, Nityabhi Yuktanam, such people, Tesham, Yoga, Kshemam, Yoga and Kshemam. Yoga, their drive for deriving new knowledge and new competencies and new skills, etc., as well as Yoga, Kshema, their existing capabilities will be enhanced. Kshema, Yoga Kshema, Vahami, I will carry them. Vahami, I will carry them. The self will carry them. The self, if you are focused on it, body, mind, and intellect focused, then your yoga and Kshema will be carried by me, the self. That is the promise that Krishna gives. If you are convinced that the infinite self is what you are, and you are completely focused on the reflection of that infinitude as sacrifice in all your thoughts and words and deeds, then the self will definitely help you to develop your capabilities as well as to enhance your capabilities. This is the promise. So you can say that 922 is the ultimate warranty certificate given by Krishna to Arjuna, or the warranty certificate that we can get from the Bhagavad-Gita. 922 is the warranty certificate. Krishna cannot fail. If you do this, you will definitely. That is developing new capabilities, enhancing existing capabilities towards the satisfaction of the global goals. The self will help you. Those who work without distractions and are always devoted and focused on the goal, higher goal, for them, the processes in the brain, our brain, will definitely take care of giving you, obtaining you what you lack, yoga, and preserving and enhancing what you already have, Kshema. That is the central message of the Bhagavad-Gita. So what is the message of Bhagavad-Gita? If somebody asks you, you can always say, Ananya Chindayanto Mam Yajanaha Paryupasate Tesham Nityabhiyuktanam Yogakshemam Mahamiyam. That is what I learned from Bhagavad-Gita. That is the message that Bhagavad-Gita gives you. And you should be able to understand what it means. We have described it in detail. So what happens is, at that point in time when you are convinced, the body, mind, and intellect becomes just a tool in the hands of the self. The PMI becomes a tool, mere tool. It doesn't have its own intentions and capabilities and skills. Those intentions, capabilities, and skills are nothing but the play of the self on it. So let us all become instruments in the hand of the self. Let us all become instruments in the hands of Krishna. That is what, ultimately when you personalize it, you can talk about like that. Become the instruments in the hands of Krishna. Become the flute of Krishna so that Krishna can blow the air through it to create the music of your life. Become the flute. The flute does not produce music. The flute, to produce music, it needs to have the breath of Krishna in it. So let us all carry the breath of Krishna within us. And when the breath of Krishna runs through each one of us, then what is produced is the music, the Venugana, the music of Krishna comes out of our lives. Okay, so this awareness should help us to identify with the infinite. And the tool that we have within us to identify ourselves with Krishna is the brain, mind, the intellect. The intellect has to be shaped. Through focused, through first of all having a raised awareness. In the sense, what is self? You be aware of it, you raise your awareness about the self, and therefore you will find opportunities to apply the self. We saw the various lists: determination, focus, persistency, consistency, and all those things. We see opportunities to actually tap the self. Raised awareness, we need to have that raised awareness first. And focused attention to actually do that. It is not about, okay, I know the opportunity, but I should have the focus to capture it. If the opportunity comes by walks in front of you and you don't do anything about it, nothing happens. You have to capture that opportunity. Focused attention and deliberately practice it. Deliberately apply Gita in your life. Deliberately. Persistently and consistently apply Bhagavad-Gita in your life. You can also set accountability for the self. You should, you can set accountability in different ways. One of the ways, very easy for every one of us to identify, is that, yes, if I don't do it, Krishna will be unhappy. Krishna within me is there. The Krishna, wherever you can place the Krishna in Guruvayur. You can place everywhere, or in Tirupati, or wherever it is. And then make yourself accountable to Tirupati Bhagavan. Make yourself accountable to Guru Ayurappan, etc. And then you have more, motivation to actually apply this knowledge. If you don't want that, you can set the accountability to your inner self. That is what Advaita Vedanta tells us. So it doesn't matter whether you are following Dvaita philosophy or Advaita philosophy. If it is Dvaita philosophy, look at it that way. If it is Advaita philosophy, look at it in the inner self way, infinite. Either way, set accountability to that power. It is like, sometimes some people, when nobody is watching, they do bad things. Isn't it? And when in the classroom or wherever, or our children, or wherever it is, when we are not looking, they behave in a different, when we are looking, they behave very decently. When the teacher is in the class, everyone is very decent. But when the teacher turns her head to look at the whiteboard or blackboard, suddenly they do a lot of mischievous things behind the back, because they know that the teacher is not watching. But here, if you have the conviction that the self is infinite, it is the ultimate witness, you cannot cheat the self. You can never cheat the self. Whatever you do, the self is watching you. Self, you cannot hide from the self. That conviction, if you have, you will never do bad things. That is basically what it's all about. That is the accountability Advaita Vedanta philosophy talks about. Otherwise, what happens? People have, they believe in Guru Ayurappan, and they believe Guru Ayurappan is at home also. So they will. But some people think that when they are in Guru Ayur only, then the Guru Ayurappan is seeing them. That is a problem. That should not be the case. In Malayalam, there is a small poetic fragment by one of the ancient scholars. I'll chant that line and then I will try to explain for those who don't Malayalam. എന്നിൽ നിന്ന് എന്നിലേക്കുള്ള ദൂരം കണ്ട് അമ്പരന്നു നിൽക്കുന്നു ചിലർ. Okay, that is, most people, they are bewildered by the distance from eye to eye. The small I am, and the capital I am seeking. And there is a big difference. The distance is basically what I am thinking. So I am bewildered. And most people are standing bewildered because of the seemingly different I and I, the distance between I and I. എന്നിൽ നിന്ന് എന്നിലേക്കുള്ള ദൂരം, the distance from me to me is bewildering me. Most people are in that state. That should not be. Is basically what Upanishads are telling me, teaching us. That is what the Advaita philosophy is teaching us. That is what even the Dvaita philosophy is teaching us. Never be bewildered by the distance between I and the capital, small I and the capital I. So, in fact, this story is that there was a Brahmin, Nambudiri, who was standing in front of his hut, thatched hut. And he had a small, bundle in his hand because he was now starting to go to Guruvayur. Guruvayur temple was far away. And he did not have the means to reach Guruvayur temple. He was so poor that he was standing at the gate looking out for people to beg so that he can get something and then start his pilgrimage to Guruvayur. And he was sad and standing and crying that he is not able to go to Guruvayur. That is when this poet sang this, told him this. That person was standing there in sadness because of the distance between his current position and Guruvayur. Whereas Guruvayurappan is right within his self. And still he is crying that he is not able to reach Guruvayurappan. That is what it is. This is the state in which we all are. We forget the infinitude that we are, and instead becoming like limited people, we cry about with our limitations, challenges, and all the sadness and all the happiness, hope and despair, the samsara, the life and death situation that we face every day in our life. Little thinking that the infinite happiness and knowledge is right within me. That is me. That knowledge, that conviction is the devotion that we need to develop within our minds. And for that, and for the tool is there. We constantly do this. It will myelinate our brain to think in that way. It will create new connections, new ways of doing this, connecting with this. Synaptic connections are created. And they are myelinated by the brain through constant, persistent practice. And if we really start devising novel ways of, trying to connect to the self, new neurons are also created to help you to do that in the brain. So nature, by its benevolent nature, with compassion, that infinitude has created a tool within us called the brain, with multiple neurons to exploit, and not only neurons, but dendrites and synaptic connections. This is the present physical material manifestation present that the infinite has given us into our brains, which can be shaped through the process of neuroplasticity. Only process that is required is what? Kshema and yoga. The process of myelination and synaptic connections. Kshema and yoga, neurogenesis, new things, learning new things. Through raised awareness, focused attention, deliberate practice, and setting accountability, the brain can be reshaped such that we connect with the infinitude. So, the self. See that when that moves around, everywhere there is self. And then we identify with oneself. I mean, in the sense, one body BMI as the self. Ego, intellect, mind are cultivated and are energized. And then comes I, me thinking, I and me, I and mine, likes and dislikes, happiness and sorrows, pleasure and pain. All this becomes the nature of the mind. It is not the nature of self, it is the nature of the mind. When we actually start understanding, connecting with that I and the small I with the I, when we realize that there is no distance between the I and the I, when we realize that when we actually start realizing it, what is happening? The ego, mind, intellect, everything disappears. And the self attains your BMI. There is still you are different. In the sense, physical BMI is still there, but still your BMI has evolved, dissolved, and you become one with the self. Even though physically still you are separately identifiable, you still live in this world with the sense of infinitude. That is what is called as savikalpa samadhi. Savikalpa samadhi. Vikalpam, difference. The differentiation is still there, savikalpam, but we have attained the self in all of actions. Savikalpa samadhi. There is a state when you don't have to even think about it. That is, through this constant process of practicing it, you will come to a state where you don't have to even think about it. And you become merged with the self. That is what is called as nirvikalpa samadhi. There is no vikalpam there. Nirvikalpa samadhi. The state of absolute bliss is obtained. Whether you can do that in the physical life here and other things, it is all through practice, constant thinking. And ultimately, when your mind does not even question, your intellect and mind does not question your, within you, saying that, oh, no, how can I be infinite? How can I be infinite? That question comes means, and you can fight that question and to convince yourself that is savikalpa. But when that question never arises in your mind, it is nirvikalpa. This is the practical living of Bhagavad-Gita. Practice, in practical living. I'm not talking about sannyas and going to Himalayas and all those things. We are talking about, we are all normal people, common people. Okay? We are not big people. We are common people. We don't have the capacity to become like a Ramana Maharshi or somebody like that. But we are living in this world with all our small things, requirements, needs, everything. And the need to support others, etc., etc., etc. There, how can you live is basically what I'm talking about. So that self, when it is focused, body-mind, focusing the body, mind, and intellect, the blue path, on that knowledge, subtle knowledge, the values and wisdom, then unlimited gains are going to come to you. That which you never thought will happen to you will start becoming reality in this physical world. This is the state of devotion. Whereas if you are powered by knowledge, wealth, and power, instead of values and wisdom, knowledge, wealth, and power, then limited gains. And that will result in delusion. So constantly we have to do this through a process. And what is the process? That is what the final verse of the 9th chapter talks about, which is about manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru mamevaishyasi yuktaiva atmanam matparayana. It is about matmana, tatmana, tatbhakta, tatparayana, tatyaji, namaskuru. This is the 5-step process that Krishna advocates finally. What is it? Think about it. First, start thinking in these lines. Then put your heart to that, to connect with it. Bhakti. Make it to your top priority. That this is what it is. This is my priority. I have to live like this. I cannot cheat. Put all efforts towards it and start putting the effort to it, towards the goal. With full focus and dedication combined with humility. This This is the why process. Think about it, put your heart to it, make it top priority, put all efforts and focus with humility. So that is what these 4 chapters are telling us. So the whole of this 9th chapter can be summarized in these 5. Self is infinite. That self is what is enlivening our body, mind, and giving up the mind the capacity to exhibit its several characteristics. Therefore, you should develop a faith in the self to maintain and develop your capabilities. For that, use focus, devotion, selflessness, and humility. That will help you to attain the self. That's the message. That's all there is to it. And if you do that constantly, ananyas chintayantoma, let that thoughts power pulverize you in your life constantly throughout your life. That will expand you to infinitude. So now the 10th chapter we will start off in the next class, next session. Today we will stop at this point, the infinitude. Let us all taste the sweetness of that infinitude. At least today for some time, start thinking about it, that infinitude. Live in that infinitude. And let us live in that infinitude. We'll conclude now and then we'll have some discussions. Anandji also will express his thoughts. Okay. Can we also chant the Gita Arati, and then we'll come.